Pollinator Workshop on such a drizzly day. Nice to see you all. I'm Patty. I work at Beak and one of the co-sponsors of this event. And I'm very happy to introduce Tom Sullivan. He's a landscape designer with Pollinators Welcome and has specialized in pollinators and their gardens for how many years, Tom?
10.
10 years. So enjoy and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. So when we're trying to design or provide for pollinators, we're trying to think about how we can support the highest number of species and also the highest number of individuals within each species. So, trying to create a lot of diversity and abundance, and both of those working together create resilience. Big part of the puzzle here is knowing that bee species fluctuate every year. They're not all at the same rate successful from whether either the flowers that they were taking or the nesting that they chose. So they can make bad choices in nesting. It could get rained out, or it could be too hot, or it could be too cold. So they're fluctuating all the time, and they could have different diseases, or the flowers that they relied on could be toxic or have pesticides in them. So they're all fluctuating. So when we're trying to design for them, we're trying to have the highest diversity of species. Yes, we can plant one plant that we know bumblebees will go to. That would be nice for that plant and the bumblebee, especially if it was enough of it when they flew to that plant that they had enough to eat and take back to their nest. But when we create diverse plantings, and we're doing a lot more for all the species that are in our neighborhood. Bumblebees are going to fly about a mile, maybe further. And a lot of the other smaller bees, 200 feet to 500 feet or so. So just be aware that if you're seeing a little bee, you know they're not nesting too far away. So there are a few good sources of plants arranged in something like this is called a bloom calendar. And the bloom calendars are fantastic because it shows you, early, mid, and late season. And the recommendation is always like, well, start with 3 in each season if you can. So this happens to have at least 4, maybe 6, and 5 of these early species, the Aquilegia, the Eastern Columbine, the blue indigo, the Penstemon Digitalis we showed out, which is the beard tongue, is out on the porch. Ohio spiderwort, you may have known. Now, any of these plants, you might not know them. So ask me a little bit about them if you say, hey, what is that? But for the most part, there are many more. The spring ephemerals are, as I showed you before, the willows are not on this list. But this is from a seed mix from the National Resource Conservation Service. So this is what's available in the seed world at the time that this bloom calendar was made. But it's a decent start.
The colors.
What are the colors?
What do they indicate?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So they're the color of the bloom. And when it comes to grasses, it's the color of the grass and the bloom. It's very iffy because they change a lot. But the colors are associated with the bloom color for all the other plants. And this was my eye trying to pick out a color on a wheel from memory of what that plant. It's very. Don't take it as the God's truth or anything. But important to look at. Blue is a very important plant for pollinators. They're very attracted to it. So whenever you get a blue plant, go for it. So I try to make sure I got as many of those in here as possible. Baptisia australis is great blue, early bloomer. It attracts bumblebees and is a nitrogen fixer. It takes nitrogen out of the air and puts it into the soil, and so she. Baptisia australis, and there's the other one, another one too. There are other Baptisias, but I chose this one because of the blue. But there are others. And then there's a hoary vervain that has like a bluish flower, which I like a lot, and this England Aster, which I never saw before, but I think I can't wait to see it. And then the Aster oblongifolia, which are the ones that bloom late into the season that I mentioned, and those aster slides. And then campanula. So I think it's really important to kind of focus on the blue plants and to see and create gardens that have them in it. And I really like the wild blue indigo, the Baptisia, because it's a structural plant as well. So it's kind of fairly big plant. It takes up a lot of space, and you can really set a rhythm to many of your designs with them. And the other part is the structure above, which is pretty important. So structure matters when all these start flowering, but and a lot of them, some of them will be large, some will be medium, some will be low, and different species, lots of different species can have activity when there's lots of niches that are all over the place, right? So it can't be dominated one big species. Say a field of clover, a lot of times it gets dominated by bumblebees, honeybees, and not much else. That is white clover, and then red clover is almost the same, but has more variation in its size. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But we generally garden this way anyway. We generally garden with plants up and down. But just know that you're actually creating, by gardening, gardeners are really important, you're creating more species diversity potential by doing it. Okay, so we're talking about minimum 9 species, 16 species gets to be more really good if you can, you know, like 4 or 5 in each species in each season or so. But there is a direct correlation between the number of species and the number of species of pollinators and bees related to the number of plant species. So especially if you vary the family. Like if it's all clover, then it's going to be all the clover family. It's going to be a little different if you mix all the different families up, because you have more species that way. So, and also you diversify the flower color and the shape. You start adding more potential. This is all about having more diversity, right? And more numbers. So you start adding the numbers of flowers and the number of different kinds of flowers. That's how you get it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay. So, okay. So, now we're going to get into the flowers. Each slide's going to have one flower each, and there's about 60 of them. Okay, I know, it's going to be hard, but let's try it, okay? Now, they're arranged in the seasonal, the structural, in the layers with structural, seasonal, theme, and functional, okay? So one group is going to be one, and the smaller group is a structural, the biggest group is a seasonal theme. So we might take a little breath before we get into the seasonal theme. But before we do that, here's the idea for this comes from Claudia West and Tom Rainier. They wrote this book on planting in the post-wild world. Fantastic book. talking about all the things you need to consider when you're planting. Planting in a post-wild world. They use plants from all over the place, but they also recognize the importance of native plants. But their design ideas are really excellent.
And it was Claudia West.
Claudia West and Thomas Rainier, R-A-I-N-E-R, or I-E-R. Anyway, you start with the structurals because they're big, right? They're creating some presence. You know, they're creating like direction signals in a way to not only us, but also to bees. Bumblebees navigate according to landmarks in the trees, fence posts, things like that. They navigate through, and so when there's tall plants around, they know where they are, because they're really busy getting nectar and pollen. Then they come up and go, okay, where am I? You know, where's next? So they get enough feed right here, but they've run out of feed right there. They're going to try to find out where they are, or if they want to go back to the nest, they're going to say, okay, where am I? Oh, there it is. Boom. Right around there, fly. So anyway, you start off with those taller plants, placing those first. And then you place the seasonal theme plants. Now, this seasonal theme is a smaller circles mixed in with the structural plants. Wish I could show it to you.
What's
It's
the
really
idea with
pretty.
the seasonal theme? Do you try it and have a different place that's exciting in each season, or do you try and have the season sort of dispersed so you've got some color all the time?
Yes, both.
All of them.
Oh, both.
Both,
Okay.
either or.
Okay.
Either or. So it's basically you're setting something different than, so these structural plants are doing something too. And they have their own seasonal, but they had to separate them from the other plants because of their size and how much they do in the environment to create something that's pleasing to humans. Bees don't really care that much, I don't think, about that, but we do. And we want something that's aesthetically pleasing. So something that's high, like this, is going to have more interest in a way. Then we have these smaller plants that have these different flowers that are doing something different, either by their color or by their leaf. And some designers are mostly concerned about the leaf and how the leaves really read, because most of the time they're in a leaf stage. But anyway, that's another thing to consider. But for flowers and mostly attracting bees, we're thinking about the flowers.
So
And
the seasonal plants then go in close proximity to the structural ones. If I'm reading what
They grow
Luann's
around
saying.
them, and you can create like rivers of a color. You can do lots of different things, or clumps and related colors. It's really what you're doing there isn't as important as varying the colors of the flowers and having enough of them in groups that make it sensible, and also sensible for pollinators, and also makes it reads in a way better for us. But it could also be just a scatter of all different species of around the same height to fill out maximum density of flowering, because they are basically filling in around the taller plants, and they're also supporting the flower plants. Now, I'm going to show this, try to see if you can see this. I don't know what we did. Can anybody see that? Can you see that?
Yep.
Can you describe what that looks like? Different than that?
Yeah, there's little things in between that you can't see on the screen. Not sure how to describe it.
Okay.
They're smaller.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
smaller. They're
Yeah.
smaller. They're smaller, and they're moving in some kind of rhythm or pattern, and they're mostly supporting the taller plants. And then the ground covers all these other smaller dots, right? And they're flowing through the system as well. And so that's the basic idea. You're going from talls, mediums, to ground covers. The dynamic filler layer are the things like the Rudbeckias and the Coreopsis, create a lot of seed, and then they come and they go, and they don't compete very well with other plants. So as the garden develops, they'll be there as seed to whenever there's a disturbance, whenever you're digging in the ground, they might grow again, but they're not persistent. They're more like an annual than they are a perennial. So that whole idea,
Yeah, they are. Now you can see it.
okay, this is sort of like you can see it. These are trees though, so you can take the trees out and just maybe replace the trees with these larger circles. You can put them in groups. You can see how there's a lot you can do with it, of course. If you have a path running through, then you're thinking of the flow along with the path. And a lot of times our eyes are accustomed to things flowing along an edge of a woodland, along the edge of a river, on the edge of a road. Things like that kind of stir us in a lot of ways. So the more we group things together that are flowing or that are popping at different, like grasses at different heights and different plumes, the more exciting it is. Does that talk to any? Does that speak to you at all? Tell me if it doesn't. Okay, I get lots of nods. Good. Okay, then we'll go on. So the plants. This is in the structural layer. All of these in this section are structural, and that means they're at least 4 feet. Baptisia, incredible blue. I can't believe how beautiful the blue is to me, so I love it. So do bumblebees. And bumblebees are the only pollinators of this plant. This is a big bumblebee, right? Using its weight to get inside the flower. I've seen little bumblebees, early bumblebees, jumping on the bottom part of the flower. Where is it? There, trying to get in, to the flower, and flying around and then jumping back on it, trying to get in. Then finally stay there long enough. If they stay there long enough, they will get inside. Interesting part about this flower, it puts its pollen on the back of the bee, right where you can't scratch it, right where you can't remove it. Got these great claws, but you're going to miss a lot in that spot right there. So what they do, the bee goes in, and then it's the way the mechanism is, it curls down the bee and it deposits the pollen right on the back. So that plant is going to get a lot of pollination every time,
Right.
almost every time.
Smart plant.
Yes, it's really smart. And a wonderful, wonderful plant. Big and blue, and the leaves are a little bit bluish.
And then it makes these pods there. Big round.
Yes, great rattly
yeah.
pods, yes.
Okay, yes.
So everybody knows Echinacea. Everybody? It's a wonderful plant. Bumblebees, honeybees, and butterflies. You have to have a pretty long tongue to get into these. But wow, what beauty, and the fragrance of the flower is really something to take in. Yeah, I never thought of actually smelling it because they look so spiny. So last year I put my nose out. Oh my God, that's really nice. No wonder they want to go to it so often.
Do the birds eat the dry seeds? I usually leave them during the winter.
Finches
Yeah.
seem to go to them.
I thought I've seen them over.
Yeah. And they miss a lot of them too, so they drop all over the ground.
Yeah.
Here's a plant that I absolutely love, and it's got these beautiful, it's big, 6 to 8 feet tall. really big leaves, and they have a square stem, and where the leaf meets the stem, let's see, meets like this, right? And it's right at that place. It calls it a cup. They call it a cup plant because it's like a cup. It holds water. So when it rains, water rolls down the leaf and it holds in there. So birds and butterflies and bees. I've seen little frogs in these things. So it's really cute. Really, it's not a cute plant. It's like a dinosaur plant, but it's so structural. You can also see it's got a hole. It's got a hole in it.
Bee houses out the
Yes, I'm making bee houses out of it. So these are. Remember those mason bees I told you about earlier that I had to move the nest to? I stuck a bunch of these in there because I was looking around for something quick, and they were right there, and they're using them. Yes, they are, and it's really quite.
Too big for pithy bees?
I think they're too big for the pithy scented. Yes.
Are they part of the mint family? Because of their
No, it's just a sunflower family.
square stem.
Yeah, that's odd, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. And no, they're sunflower. Pass them around.
They're very cool.
Yeah.
I worked for a woman that she called those the outhouse flowers.
Ah,
Outhouse.
yes. I heard of that.
I always wondered what
To hide
they
it?
called.
Because the leaves are big?
I don't think
To
I've
hide
ever
it?
seen it.
To hide the others?
I think because you can use them to wipe yourself.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, when you had too much food and you said. Here's a really. I love all plants, so I'm going to say I really love this plant or something like that. But just bear with me.
You say that about all of them.
This is hard. This is a hard plant to really show because I don't have a great picture. But you see that? That's about 4 feet, 4.5 feet high. It puts out their stems, very structural. It's really a beautiful thing, and it's got these great flowers. And it also has nectaries, these little ports for putting a little bit of nectar out, not associated with the flower. That ants
Oh,
love, and ants probably protect the plant too. So that's really cool.
and where do the flowers form? At the tops?
Yeah, they all in different places along the stem. Yeah, it's an odd plant, but it's also a nitrogen fixer. It's like partridge pea, and if you can see it, yeah, buy it if you find it. Also, it has these beautiful pods that last all throughout the winter. And they have little seeds. I know the chickens like them, and I think they'd be. I don't think the chickens will allow it to live in the same yard, but it'd be interesting to as a crop for them. Oxeye sunflower we have, right? And we have some here. It's a really beautiful native sunflower. Gets about 4 feet high. Doesn't crawl all over the place. Doesn't reseed everywhere. So it's a really garden-worthy type plant, as would be senna. If they say if you're going to plant one plant, any kind of plant, if you're only going to plant one plant, plant something in the sunflower family. Because so many different species come to them. But the cup plant was also in the sunflower family. And I'll try to remember if I come across another. Yep, these grow to 3 to 6 feet high. I have mostly seen them at 4 to 5 feet high. And I've never seen them any higher, but maybe in a wetter spot with more nutrition they could. New England Aster. You guys know New England Asters? Well, up here, do you? Yeah? There are lots of them around. Yeah, fantastic plant. I particularly love the purple ones, but they have a wide range from pink to almost blue, purpley blue. 3 to 6 feet, definitely 6 feet in a semi-fertile position. I cut mine down to 2 feet, June 21st. and just lop it or trim it right off, and then it'll get to be about 4 feet, really bushy and very beautiful, easy to take care of at that point. When they get to be 6 feet, they want to flop, and you might have to stake them. I try to avoid the staking.
So you
Did
cut
you
to
say
2
July
feet?
31st?
June 21st,
Cut to 2 feet, as you said?
2 feet. This Indian grass is pretty interesting. It has a beautiful plume. And there are various cultivars. Sioux Blue is a real nice one. Blue, and then having those great plumes at the top. Let's see. They like moist, fertile soil, but once they get established, they will be drought tolerant. So if you're going to grow them, got to feed them for a while, keep watering them, and then they'll be good. They have a lot of butterfly associations with them. They're very beautiful and structural. And there's one of the native plants, a couple of them, but they're a native plant that can really shine in a landscape. Give that structure, yes.
If you plant them in a moist area, are they going to spread rapidly?
A real moist area or a semi-moist?
Not a bog, but semi. A lot of water flowing over in the spring.
You know, I don't know about the water flowing over in the spring. That means they probably have a lot of water in the fall too, right? I don't know. I think that'd be a little bit marginal. I think it'd have to get up on the slope a little higher, but be worth trying. If you get a couple of cheap plants to try, see if they work. I'm not sure about that. I think mostly they go in the mesic soils, the soils that are fairly rich, but also a little bit on the poor side too. I've seen that too. Like not super rich soil, not soil that you're going to grow crops in, or soil that's kind of marginal. Most of these plants have grown in places like this, but where they are growing out in the west, where the prairies are more alive, they're not in really wet spots. So big bluestem is another one of those big ones. Look at that guy there. I don't know how tall he is, but he looks like he's about 6 foot. And that could be, you know, a leprechaun in disguise or something. But, you know, there again, different species are being selected. I don't know about hybridized, but big range throughout the United States and Canada. And it's really a worthy plant to have. Another one of those structural plants that does good. And all these grasses have some associations with different butterflies and skippers that they lay their eggs on. Don't know all the different species that, I don't know how many people know these species. I haven't found it yet, but the grasses are definitely places for them to feel safe. And they can actually lay their eggs, so their eggs, their larvae have to be able to eat the leaves once they're laid, right? That's what butterflies, how they're different. They really need a close source of places where they can lay their eggs. Anytime you're growing a native grass, you're more likely to be feeding the larvae of butterflies and moths and various other insects. So very important and often neglected. And talk about superstructure. These switch grasses can get really much larger and fairly ornate, you know, and there are a lot of people working on the different selections for them too. Which, you know, I think is pretty exciting. So getting back to the straight species, or when we're talking about gardening, could you ask your question?
Oh, yeah, my question was, I've heard there's a bit of a debate about whether or not cultivars of native plants are as good for pollinators as really wild native plants.
Anybody have an opinion about that? You want me to hear mine? Okay. I think selections are fine, myself, but when you start hybridizing, you don't really know, and it could be really challenging. So a selection is you plant out 1 billion seeds. As you know, Luther Burbank. Yep. Okay. You know his technique, what he did. He would plant all these seeds from, say, peaches, from wherever he got them from. And he would plant out thousands of them, and they would go down and go, that one, that one. And he would select from them, and all the others he would pretty much throw away. So he was selecting for something he saw in that baby sapling way before it ever produced anything. He could see these things, and he was very successful, so he probably could see very, very well. So other plantsmen will do the same thing. They're growing out native seeds, and there's lots of variation. They're going to be picking, that one looks like that could really grow well. And so they will go then breeding them according to their genetics. So it would be the same species from a selection is different than hybridizing to try to say, oh, this Indian grass that grew here is we're going to breed it with something from Africa because it's kind of similar, and then that type of thing is very different than selecting from the seeds.
I had a thought too, hybridizing to prevent disease or pests, so it might be less enticing to native pollinators because it's supposedly not enticing to other kinds of pests or insects, I suppose.
Right. So if it can't be eaten by some insect, it doesn't have much ecological value.
Yeah,
But you don't want the insects to eat every single bit of the plant.
exactly.
So, I mean, they don't last very long when that happens, right? But if you can be breeding because of resilience, its ability to adapt to the environment, and for beauty, I think that's pretty good. That's where I would tend to land. I'm not totally against
Things in mixture, so it's not just the whole monocrop
yeah,
of a certain
monocrop,
kind of
yeah.
grass, because then they might be less
Yeah.
susceptible to being.
Yeah, and there's some plants that aren't native at all. I prefer native plants because I think bees prefer native plants than non-natives. But there's like a late blooming mum that has these big yellow and pink flowers. They're just like, bees are crazy about them, and I go, well, I think it's good to have a little bit of them. And then there's another Calamintha nepeta, which is really long blooming that the bumblebees really love, and I believe it has a menthol in it. So menthol, plants that have menthol in it, like the thymol, is the ingredient. I don't know, thymol is the molecule, I guess, I'm not sure. But anyway, the bees, when they consume these, even honeybees, have a little bit more protection. And I say, okay, well, if it's in this family of the mint family, we don't have a lot of native mints, but the mint family would be really important to pay attention to, especially for this antimicrobial, antiviral protection. So, I think it's worth having these plants because they're late blooming and long blooming. It'd be worth having. But we need studies. We need people to study. I know Annie White from the University of Vermont has studied cultivars. I'm not totally sure what she came up with. But anyway, you might want to look into her, Annie White, University of Vermont, if you're concerned about that. So, the next is the seasonal theme plants. That's highlighted there. So usually medium size, add color and texture, add a lot of pollen and nectar to create more diversity and abundance, and they fill in around the structural plants. So, rules of thumb. So place tall plants for structure and root depth, and to add more niches. Keeping in mind that when you're gardening, a lot of people don't like plants that are up over their head, so you don't want to put them right along the path, unless you really want to give them a little fright. So arrange tall plants to create drama and to increase the niche potential and not close to the edge. Plant the mid-height plants, the seasonal theme plants, to support taller plants, fill in around them, while also giving them some support. They are often showy, so they give us some flair and excitement. Then the ground layer plants are often rhizomataceous and stoloniferous. So they have to succeed because they're trying to get light. So they got to move around. They're not so big. That's important to consider when you place them in the garden. They also knit the soil together. Around the roots of the taller plants, they halt erosion and build soil. And we often use these around closest to our paths, and so that everything looks kind of nice and approachable. And it gives people a little bit more space. So,
You use the word edge,
yes.
and how do you mean edge?
Well, usually that means edge of a path. So when we're designing, we often have beds, right? And the beds are often not awfully deep. They're more accessible to us. But when we have a wider planting and we have paths going through it straight or at a curve, we have a lot more, it's a lot more eye appealing to have a curve, natural curve to something. So, and it's also adds a lot of opportunity for the lower plants to have a presence. We don't want the plants leaping out of the bed at people if we can. Generally want to have, if we want to have narrow beds, it's more important, narrow paths. The more narrow the path, the wider the edge needs to be. Just to feel a little bit like, you have a little space moving through it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Especially for people who are afraid of ticks.
What's that?
Especially for people who are afraid of ticks.
Yes, I didn't want to say that. I don't want to bring that dirty word up. It's the curse. A lot of people are afraid of ticks.
Good reason.
Yeah, and I think we need more birds. So the more we feed the birds real food, the more likely they are. And what do birds need for their young the most of?
Insects.
Yes. So the more we plant for plants, the more native they are, the more edible they are. The more edible they are, the more birds young. The further the plant is, the feeding plant is, or the food supply is for the mother bird, the longer the interval between for the nestling having to wait for food. So it's really important to be thinking of our plants being edible for insects. That's a dirty word, I know. Everybody wants to kill insects, but insects are extremely important. And we've lost about 45% of them in the last, for volume's sake, 45% of insects globally are down in the last 40 years.
Wow.
And I have one sneaky suspicion as to why.
Speaking of tall flowers, like they make corn mazes, has anybody ever made a flower maze?
Oh, that's a great idea.
You're going to do it.
That's a great idea.
I'll come visit.
Let's raise some money for that. That's a great idea. God, that's a good
I know
idea.
somebody made a little play area for their child by sunflowers. Just made like a box.
Yes, yes.
We ourselves, we grow a row of sunflowers to the border of the road, picnic table on one side, road on the other. So over the summer, it becomes more and more of a natural wall.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. Yes, I've seen people planting on their front lawns doing something like that. It's really brilliant. God, what are those things called? Labyrinths. I would love to create a labyrinth, very similar to a maze, right? So, going to that next layer, Aqualesia. Everybody know the Eastern Columbine?
There's some right out along the wall, right outside as you come up the driveway. A lot of that. It keeps spreading and spreading. It's beautiful. It's coming even out of the stones.
Yes, and there are a couple different varieties. Some that are little, small, about a foot high, and there's some that are like that flower about 2 or 3 feet high. Beautiful. Bumblebees in particular. There's a bumblebee. They can get to that pollen. I don't see any other bee on them. It's pretty cool plant. They feel very mysterious when they show up. We have Penstemon Digitalis, which is a beard tongue out on the table. Very beautiful. This is that farm in Hadley, Massachusetts. That's a plenty farm. I designed their nursery. And they also have a meadow out beyond. But the Penstemon Digitalis is the white flowering in the background. And it looks like the flowers are just dancing in the air because the stems are very slender, and most of the plant's leaves are down fairly low. So it's planting out there. You see them; they're bright white, and they have tubular flowers that. Let's see where. Yeah, bumblebees like to get in there. There's also the Saratina bee.
Where is this?
Where?
In Massachusetts.
No, this is different. These are just selected slides off the internet.
Oh, but the nursery that you were talking
Oh, it's in Hadley. That's a plenty farm, in Hadley, Massachusetts.
That's a plant.
That's a plenty.
That's a plant.
That's a plenty.
And they sell these plants.
Yeah, they're starting to sell seeds, and they're starting. They've been selling seeds, and they're starting to sell plants this year, which is pretty cool.
Are they on?
They're in the Great Meadow
Oh.
of Hadley, which is also called the Honey Pot, and they live on Honey Pot Road.
Honey Pot Road.
It's a great location, really, really great, and they're really nice people, really fun. So, plant that's not really from the Northeast, but is wonderful, is this Amsonia. It's also called Blue Star. This is not showing, but that row there is all light blue. Amsonias, they're just a beautiful light blue, early for bumblebees. Beautiful flower. They can get like about 3 feet. Maybe I've seen them around 4 feet, but they grow mostly. They stay rather compact. They grow up like this, and I don't have a picture, but their yellow leaf in the fall is just amazingly. It's just like so brilliant. It's worth having a number of them in your garden. Menorah, bergamot, wild bergamot. You've probably seen these. This is the flower for the wild bergamot. They're like bee balm. It's a riot of bumblebees, mostly bumblebees, and the clear-winged moths and butterflies will come to them. This is the #1 plant for pollinator species diversity.
Is there any type of that clumps rather than spreading and taking over a whole area?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
So, these are where you want to plant tightly with ground covers at the base,
Mm-hmm.
so that They don't invade. They don't invade my garlic chives, which I plant rather thickly, and I think they would not go through mycorrhizum. There's geranium mycorrhizums, and I think still that they probably wouldn't go through the mosses too. So a series of different small plants that will grow tight against their. I don't see them penetrating, except that they'll move into an open space.
Mm.
Do you have that experience?
Oh yeah, I'm not a big gardener, so
Oh.
I like leave things and then let things take their course. And I have a huge area now that's all bee balm, and
Yeah.
it's great while it's blooming. But
Yes. Well, it's not that hard to dig out.
What is it?
One
What
second.
says the black walnut root
I'm sorry?
at the bottom of one of the tracts? It says black walnut, and I guess it's the soil.
No, it's tolerance.
Tolerance.
Of black-
Oh, I see.
underneath black-
Tolerates the black walnut
Yeah.
roots,
Right. There are a number of plants that could do that,
which
which is important to know because black walnuts
some don't.
exude toxin,
Oh.
juglone toxin.
What is that word that they describe plants?
Allelopath.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
allelopathic. Right. So, more of the same. Harebells. I just went looking for, typed in hairballs and pollinators. And I was really surprised at how many came up. So I just threw them in here really quickly. But this is a lovely blue. Kind of whimsical. They seem to dance above everything. I don't know how many species go to it, but and I don't know where it lies on the list of plants. But I have a chart. I have a list that I could send you about the top 25 plants.
I think I have copies of that.
Oh, do you? Oh, that's right. Do you have it here?
I do.
Oh, wonderful.
So before
Okay.
we
Okay. When we take the next break, maybe.
go. Okay.
Do you have extra copies, Patty? Do you
Yeah,
want me to
I
make some
have
copies?
copies.
Okay, great.
Coreopsis Tinctoria. We have a Coreopsis verticillata.
We have tick seed.
Tick seed, right.
Send us some chick seed. Some chick seed from, this will go away.
It's off-putting, but
Uh,
I would hope so. That'd be nice.
now, these are in that mid-range still, 2 to 4 feet, so there's lots of variations in the Coreopsis. It's hard to really say, but I know there's a verticillata. I think that's what you have. This is Tinctoria, but still, great flower, great attraction to so many different species. But they do create a lot of seeds, and if you want to control them, you probably want to deadhead them when they start making seeds. And then they just keep coming. I mean, not control them, but keep them from stopping making flowers. This butterfly milkweed is one of the top plants too for attracting various pollinators. University of Maine, there's a professor up there, Frank Drummond, who set up him and Allison Dibble. They created these different squares. I think there are 27 squares, 3 feet by 3 feet. Everything else was landscape cloth. They were just trying to study each different plant. So each square had a different plant in it. And this was by far the highest number of species up in Maine that they were attracting. But also it's beautiful. It's a milkweed that's also attracted to monarch butterflies. And as you can see, they'll land on them. I think they can also lay their eggs on them.
So it's different than the milkweed that grows wild around here.
Yes, yes,
It's a different colour.
yes. That's Syriaca, Asclepias syriaca. This is Asclepias tuberosa. It's also a plant that has very deep roots, so it's hard to move. So it's one of those plants that when you go to design it, you probably structural, and then these. The plants that would be hard to move, you won't want to just plant them thinking you could move them if you like, if it didn't work out.
That's good for breaking up soil, compacted soil too, if it has those nice deep roots.
I bet you it would. They seem to be very powerful. My first time growing them, I had to call the nursery. What the heck's going on with these plants? They've been in the ground for like 6 weeks. I have moved a bit. I said, don't worry. Okay, you're kidding me. I said, no, don't worry. And this was Claudia West. And I said, okay, Claudia, I believe you. And then they finally did start growing. And then the next year, they were just, they came right out of the
They had
ground.
to
They were
just get
flowering all over the place.
Get their
They had to get their root down.
Yeah.
This is Echinacea. Everybody aware of Echinacea? That is that's another really wonderful plant, of course. They grow about 3.5, 4 feet high. That's not it. That's a globe thistle, but they're right here. Look at these flowers. They're just simple access, but mostly it's for bumblebees, honeybees, and butterflies, because they are a little bit tubular.
Oh, that's all right, dear, that's good to
And
know.
they're also like in the mint family. They have a square stem, and they can reseed rather readily, but they don't persist. They're not a problem. And you can make the nicest tea out of them if you like anise or licorice. And I love it with a little bit of honey, and it's just so refreshing. Native Americans used to use it for depression. And I remember that when I'm feeling depressed. I'm oppressed by the heat. I'm not so depressed. Another plant that's really not very well known at all is Menorah punctata, the spotted bee balm, but quite a beautiful show. Those aren't flowers, those are bracts. And it makes it easy for pollinators to land on them. And it's also pretty important for bumblebees too. And they're one of the they can take it really hot. Let's see. Best grown in dry to medium moisture, well drained, full sun. That's something if you want them, you're going to have to ask for your nursery to get, or try to find them online. Anybody know this plant? It's another lupin-like plant. It's not quite a lupin. Beautiful yellow, rather tall. Nitrogen fixer. They're more of like a little bit of a southern plant, but our climate is changing, so these are surviving around here. So worthwhile to come. But they're probably similar to Baptisia and partridge pea in its ability to sprout, their seeds sprout. And they look like, I think they can, be a great addition to any kind of meadow and a garden as well. That yellow is pretty exciting to watch those long plumes. I've tried growing this plant, didn't have much success. I think it just got crowded out. But I think this is from the Midwest someplace, where they're growing for seed. I'd love to know that orioles would come to eat the seed. But it's really nice to have those thin, it's like Echinacea purpurea, in that the petals are, and it's different because the petals are thinner and they hang down, which is very pretty. Liatris, there's a couple different kinds. This is Scariosa, but there's also Spicata, which I have more familiarity with. But I like how these little tufts are arranged along the stem. As you know, the northern blazing star of the most of what we've seen in the Liatris, they're more, they have this big spire that comes right up. It's also very attractive to bumblebees because they can get into the flower for one, but because there's so many flowers with easy access, they can just go here and here and here and get a lot of food all in a fairly efficiently. They're not having to fly around to another flower.
Doesn't that look more like the hyssop? The hyssop.
Yes, it's like a hyssop in that way, yes. But brilliant, hot pink. Ah, here's one. Does anybody know this plant? Hoary vervain. Well, it's got, the hoary comes from being fuzzy on the leaf. Well, one of the cool things about these vervains is they send up flowers. They keep, as they get pollinated, they just keep growing the flower out. And it's a very long bloom time. And lots of different species will go to them. I love seeing butterflies on them. And it's when we have having gray, this is more like a gray-like leaf. Having a gray in the is often very nice because it shows lots of other colors off much more nicely. Any of the other colors of the flowers, deeper colors of the leaves of the other plants, and that it feeds pollinators is extra bonus. Thought I'd say, how are you?
That's good because now I can see.
Okay, all right, that's what I was thinking. Anybody know this plant? It's like a dinosaur plant.
I recognize it. I just sort of recognize it, but I don't think I knew the name.
Well, it's called Yucca folia because the leaves look like yucca a little bit. They're bluish. So you know how yucca looks? It's got like these long spears and then the little spines on the outside. Very attractive to wasps. You'll see wasps that you never saw before on this plant. Very important if you're trying to protect orchards or vegetables from moths, those other pollinators.
And rattlesnakes?
And rattlesnakes. Yes. Rattlesnakes don't like it. They remind them of, prehistoric times when they weren't dominant.
What is the connection with rattlesnakes? Is there any?
I don't know. I'm forgetting what I read about that.
Does it
Yeah.
make noise when you rattle it? It's like rattlesnake grass in California. Looks like the rattlesnake down the tails, and it also makes a rattle when you're not
When you shake it. There's another Liatris. That's the one I was talking about before.
Oh, that looks like what I had.
Yes, right. And I've seen those get about 6 feet.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Does this come in magenta as well?
I think so. They get very, you mean like a darker, hotter pink type magenta?
And I have something that I don't know what it is, and it blooms later in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be this?
I don't know about later in the fall. They're usually in the summer, sometime in July, I think. Maybe early August.
Yeah, it says July.
We good? We good? Okay. This is Showytake trefoil. It's kind of new to me. I have not grown it yet, but I just love it because I discovered it in the Montague Plains, not far from where I live, and it's one of the species in the Montague Plains, and it's very, very sandy there, extreme sandy. So anytime you got a lot of sand, you want to know what can grow there. And this is a beautiful plant. Definitely attracts bumblebees. Yes.
There's a species that grows native here called perplexed trefoil.
Ah.
It's somewhat similar in flower And it's either rare and endangered or the next category,
Yes. Wow.
unusual.
So is there anyone growing it?
Not that I know of.
That would be important to know. I mean, are there any major nurseries up here
Yes,
that are growing native plants?
not so much.
Uh-huh. This would be a good question for New England Wildflower Society. If you would mind writing a note and asking me, I will ask. These are really important plants for their nitrogen fixation and for the feeding of bumblebees. There's pycnanthemums, it's the Latin name for the mountain mints. Incanum is the hoary mountain mint. And it's got like a leaf, grayish like leaf, nice little bracts there for the butterflies and bees to land on. And very much appreciated in the mint family. These are really important plants. They attract a very high number of species. If I had that list, I could maybe.
Are they an immunity?
I believe this is what they help. I don't know for sure. But because there's so many species are attracted to it for a long bloom period, it's very valuable. As is the narrow leaf mountain mint, tenuifolium. I don't have any information there. Guess I was in a hurry when I put this slide together. But anyway,
It's the same as the previous one.
it's probably fairly similar, but I'm not sure. But it's pretty though, isn't it? With those purpley spots. When you get away from it, it looks like light purple. And there's another one, Pycnanthemum uticum, which is a very gray bract mountain mint, and whitish to whitish pink flowers. I think that's a really great landscape plant because of the grayness mostly and the high number of species of bees that go to them. We probably know of this Rebecca hirta. Feeds lots of butterflies and bees, smaller bees especially, and beetles. And lots of different varieties of them, of course, even in red. And grown throughout the United States for the most part, but looks like more so out in the west. The lighter green is do they occur? They occur in the state or in that region, but not heavily.
Drought.
Yeah, what's that?
Drought areas.
Yes, yes, and they can withstand drought. And they're one of the species mentioned before. Put out thousands of seeds, and they can't take the crowding, so they kind of go dormant. So all their seeds are in the soil bank, waiting for some kind of disturbance, somebody pulling a weed or somebody hoeing it up a little bit. And then next thing you know, you got them growing. Do you know those Gloriosa daisies? Or Gloriosa, remember those? I had them growing. Wow, I got these. I planted them. The next year there were a little fewer of them. Then they went away. What the heck happened to these? And then a couple years later, I did something, I guess, and it showed up again. I go, wow, that was years later. So that's a pretty nice thing to know. These are all in the middle range plants. In the they were trying to make something really kind of exciting. We're trying to think about reaching 16 plants, right? So it's not hard with all these medium range plants. Scutellaria, I've seen them in the purple ranges, more like this. Very kind of breathtaking. And they're from the eastern United States. They bloom for a fairly long period of time, from July into September or through September. Fairly drought tolerant too. They're 2 to 3 feet high. These red midgets supposedly grow up in New England, but I have never seen one. Or these plants I've never seen, these retibias. But they're fairly nice size, 3 to 5 feet, so they'll go above echinaceas. And I think that's a really good combination, actually. But they also, there's these small red midgets. I believe that they're probably cultivar, but I'm not sure. But because of the way that they flower, they keep flowering up this long cone in the center of the flower. And because they're red, which is pretty rare, you know, to see a native plant in red, except for maybe bee balm. Very exciting. I'm doing a design for the senior center in Greenfield, and I've got 72 of these. I don't know if I'm going to use them all, but I'm very tempted. But wow, what a plant. They don't grow too awfully wide, so and because they grow fairly low, they could really do a nice job by filling in between a border and a higher plant. Right, I see them kind of flowing through the landscape. That red. This is not a super abundant plant, easy to find, but it does grow in clumps in sandy areas. So it ought to be something that, if you can find it, and I think New England Wildflower Society should be the ones who would know. And they have a fairly long bloom period. So very highly valuable solidago or goldenrod because of those qualities. And it's similar in that it's growing straight up. So that ability for a bee to just go around the flower is pretty efficient for them. In this picture, that picture over there came from the Connecticut Botanical Society, which is a nice site to visit. They have some really, really nice pictures and descriptions of native plants.
Where is it located?
I don't know. Southern Connecticut, I believe. Showed that picture earlier with a couple asters next to each other, Aster oblongifolia and this Aster cordifolia. These are also called blue wood asters. They're quite abundant flowers. They don't last a terribly long time, but they also spread throughout. They spread rather slowly, and it's a really good ground cover. That if I had seen them at Nasami, I would have got. They weren't out yet, so and they weren't even close to blooming. So I think people weren't ready to buy them. But if you can have some forethought or know sometime in August or September, they could be in the nurseries, it would be a good one to get. That blue is pretty, it's pretty blue. And kind of pink. Staying fairly low. I've only seen them grow about 2 feet high. So, but it looks like they could grow higher. This is at That's a Plenty Farm back in 2011, 2012, the end of the year. And that's them. Here's the gray goldenrod that is a clump former, right? And what goldenrod does is it exudes an allelopathic substance that that pretty much competes very heavily with other plants and kills them. It's a toxin. And this is supposed to be a clump former, right? That field there.
It's a big clump.
So I don't know about this clump forming capacity. Either that or maybe somebody said, well, that's goldenrod. Let's show them a great, we'll go great. Let's just show them any old picture. So it could be wrong. But the thing about having goldenrods that are clump forming, it just gives you a lot more design capability. And you really want to check your plant source. Make sure that it's not going to be something that's going to sprawl all over the place.
Is that, would that be the common goldenrod that just seems to spring up? Or you don't know?
Supposedly, no.
No.
This is gray goldenrod, which is different. But you know, common goldenrod, there's 27 species. So it's there are a lot of species, and they're probably hybridized. They probably with each other. You know, there might be just lots of different kinds. So I would say if you see a big field, that's not the kind you want to put in your garden. You don't want to dig up a little patch of it.
It just springs up in my yard.
Oh yeah, right, right.
I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah. So the thing to do is maybe just take a lot of pictures of it, try to have it ID'd. You can go to Go Botany at the New England Wildflower Society and try to get it identified that way. So smooth blue aster is a plant that I'm not familiar with. I know it's in this list. I can't really say much about it except that, you know, 2 to 4 feet. It's in the mid-range.
Tom,
Yes.
can you just do a time check? We're gonna have time to do that outside planting. It's about 4.
Yes. How about if I go skip through the rest of these to get to the ground cover?
Yeah, why don't you go right to
Because we're going until 5, right?
Yeah, but we want to do the outside planting.
Are we good with the outside?
Well, it's raining. Depends. What do you think, Sue?
I was thinking if we couldn't, we could lay them out in the garage and do the design idea, or in the porch here.
Yeah, so figure about 4:30, we'll start doing the design and we'll skip the outside planting because of the rain.
If it's raining, I think it'd be a lot nicer to.
Is it still raining quite hard, Patty?
Yeah.
It's enough.
Pardon?
It's enough.
Settling in.
Yeah, so good. So we'll go through the ground covers now.
Yes.
And then we'll do a design out on the porch.
Yes. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you. I'll just go through these last of the medium layer really fast.
Good.
Another aster. These are all for that. I don't think I'll stop at something I think we should really. Rebecca fulgida is very common, easy, relatively easy plant to get. Another in the mid-range plant, attracts a lot of butterflies and bees. I spoke a lot about the Aster oblongifolia. Really has a presence. There it is along the wall there. Just getting ready to bloom. Little blue stems, which are, you see them everywhere once you know what they look like. They're a lot in very sandy places. Lots of different varieties. Really good for butterflies. This is a stunning plant in that it's feathery when it blooms and it turns like orange in the fall. I always picture this pumpkin scene, you know, like the jack-o'-lanterns and the pumpkins and corn stalks. It's a really important shrub, New Jersey tea, white flowering, attracts a lot of pollinators. Can deal with very dry sites. Aromatic aster, aromatic sumac, no, aromatic sumac, a low-growing species that the low grow can grow maybe 2 feet high, and it spreads stoloniferously. Beautiful color in the fall. Nice little berries for birds. Indistinct flowers, but gorgeous plant. And it smells really nice when you touch the leaf. This is, I think this is the last one on this list. black huckleberry. Can take really dry sites like the low bush blueberry. Okay. Going to the functional layer. Stabilizing the soil, feeding the surface, and pollinators. Pussy toes, we have them in pots out there for you to see. Very dry, hot, dry site. I have not seen many bees on these, so I can't really say for myself, but supposedly it's good for a lot of the early adrenas and the mining bees. Knotty onion, we have some of those in pots out there too, which are going to be part of the design. They get about maybe a 1.5 foot high. These flowers that droop over. The bumblebees seem to be really good at getting at flowers that hang upside down. Moss pink, moss phlox rather. You've seen that everywhere. It's really tolerant of dry soil and really nice for butterflies too. Probably seen these little tiny flowers in the fall, in September and October. I love them how they stretch out and they grow out from wherever they're planting to stretch for the light, and they just look so delicate and beautiful. Purple lovegrass. It's good for various butterflies, and it's unbelievable. That pink is just incredible. We have to have more pink. Just, it's a soul food. A prickly pear, which actually has edible little fruits on them.
Around here?
Yeah, where's the woman that had all that sandy soil that can't grow anything? Maybe it's that.
There.
So it will grow in this climate?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And low bush blueberry. Okay, here's this. Here's the list I was telling you about from Jane Sorensen. She's from Riverberry Farm in Vermont. I think it's in Halifax.
It's up north. It's up north. She did a presentation last year for the Master Gardeners.
Yeah. How was she?
How was she?
Yeah.
It was excellent. It was a wonderful presentation.
I can't wait to see her. Yeah. I love what she's done. She has three
She's
different.
Up north somewhere. I think, I don't know, somewhere near
Fairfax.
Burlington. But it's, yeah, maybe Fairfax.
It's
not
way
Halifax,
it's way up. I
it's
think
near
northwest. I think Vermont.
Yeah, you're right,
Anyway,
exactly.
she created a bunch of these, about 3 different charts like this. Great idea because now the color of the flower plus the height is, and as it goes through the season. So this is a beautiful concept. Anyway, really well done. We'll be sending this. If you sign up, is anybody signing up the sheet?
Don't forget, yeah, there is a sign-up sheet, so
Oh,
we want to
so
get this
sign up,
information.
we'll make a list and then we can send you this,
Yes,
since you can have it.
right. So these are the plants we had for. These are plants we have that these 4 here are from the Conservation Commission, including the prairie mallow. This is the bearberry, and type it in there, and the barren strawberry is out there. So.
From the Natural Resources Conservation District.
Oh.
That's where they're from. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tixie, Coreopsis. We went through that before. Tinctoria, added that in. We talked about these, and the Aquilegia, and the garden phlox. We haven't talked about garden phlox. So much variation in the garden phlox colors and heights. It's pretty hard to cover them all. I just tried to show here, like there's so much variation, and really good for hummingbirds go to the red ones, and butterflies go to some of the others, and the bumblebees also access them. Prairie mallow, it's more like an annual, really beautiful pink that has lots of great access to pollen right in the center there. That's a sure dead ringer for pollen accumulation. So when we talk about that site, that really tough site, this might be it, the bearberry. This is on sand in Alaska. Same plant. Beautiful red berry, beautiful glossy leaf, really nice flower for bumblebees. And then the other plant I have out there is this barren strawberry, which seems like it fairly dry and is stoloniferous and can fill in around a lot of other plants. And it creates these little fruits that aren't very edible for us, but probably chipmunks will eat them. Anyway, that's it for the plants.
Lavender in there.
We got-
My bumblebees love my lavender.
Sure. Now, these are all native plants.
Oh, lavender's not native.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, it's a Mediterranean plant.
I don't know anything.
So I should just tell you that some of the plants that we got are from Walker's, and Walker's has plants that they say are organic, neonic free, that are many of these. And so you can talk to them there and they should be able to help you with it. Also, the other place I found a lot of good plants is at the Bunker Farm. Really nice plants, nice specimens, pricey, but good.
You didn't have on your list mullein.
I don't know. I never heard of it.
Mullein.
Oh, mullein. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So some people think it's a rank weed.
It's pretty wild.
And other people think it's beautiful. I love it. And it's pretty tough because it has those gray leaves that can reflect a lot of heat, so they can take those hotter spots.
My mother said that they used to use mullein leaves for rouge because it would make your skin red.
Wow.
So I think it's native.
Okay. Is your mother native?
Probably not. She probably was imported.
You can also put them in your boots, in your shoes.
You put them in your boots.
Well, they're like little pads with big
Yeah,
then
those
you
are
can put them in their boots.
Wow.
for a little bit. When you're
Going out in the yard.
We should be looking for plants that are neonic free, right?
yes.
Would you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure. So neonicotinoids are these. Have everybody know about neonicotinoids? Anybody doesn't know about neonicotinoids? Okay. All right. So they came out in 1992. They're the most widely sold pesticide in the world. Agriculture, lawn care, trees and shrubs, zillions of products, lots of different fancy names. What they do is they eliminate insects. So any insect that tries to eat any part of any plant that it's treated will die. Okay, so they can't tell the difference. Pollinators can't tell the difference. It actually makes the nectar sweeter. So it's even more attractive. So it's in the nectar, it's in the pollen. So it's pretty deadly.
It's systemic in the plant, is that right?
It's systemic, so it's used as a drench. So it's better for farmers because they don't have to breathe it. They can just like put it in water and just put it along their plants. It goes into the soil and it lasts about 1,000 days. So a good 3 years, maybe 4 years. And that's its highest toxic level. And then it keeps degrading after that.
What are some of the brand names?
Safari,
Roundup?
no, Roundup is as an herbicide. That's got its different, another thing.
But I've heard that the neonics go into the soil and persist in the soil, and they come from these seeds or plants that
are
Yes.
grown with neonicotinoids.
Coated. They come in a coating too, in a coating on the plant. Corn plants, lots of other seeds have these neonicotinoids. They're very persistent, very deadly. But the biggest problem, for me, the biggest problem is not so much agriculture when you talk about corn and soybeans. I mean, they're dead zones out in Midwest.
Yeah.
They're for other reasons. There just aren't any weeds around. But the biggest problem in the Northeast, I believe, is all the products that are used for lawn care to kill grubs in the soil. And bees, 70% of them are living in the soil, nesting in the soil. They're grubs in the soil for most of the time. And then the other part is when they're going to be other insects. We have 45% loss of all insects in the last 40 years. But since 1992, these neonicotinoids have been out. I believe it's very highly correlated with loss of insects. And because the whole idea is to kill insects. So we have to start loving our insects in a very big way and not allowing these mega corporations to control our life, our life potential. It's really important. I can't see why they can't see that. They'll fight to the tooth and nail about the ineffectiveness of their products and killing insects. But anyway, right. So so the other thing about neonicotinoids in relation to or the lack of pollinators is that 1/3 of our food. That's a pretty high percentage. But it's a high percentage. The highest percentage of vitamins that we get are from pollinated plants. All of our fruits and herbs and vegetables, they're all pollinated. It's hard to think of maybe potatoes we could eat and rhubarb, but there aren't too many others that we can eat that aren't pollinated that way, that we could reproduce for our own food supply. So a lot of the nurseries that produce zillions of plants have control over this whole thing. And they're slow to get the message. Massachusetts, we've had a bill in the House of Ways and Means Committee for months and months. Lots of people, lots of senators, and everybody wants to do it, but for some reason, the people that control the money and where all the connections that go with the political power, they're holding it back. So hopefully, everybody keeps pushing. So we're getting close. And I think we will be the 4th state in the union that has excluded neonicotinoids for home and garden use, except that they're allowing them for agriculture and certification. But still, that's a big move. That's a big step.
So when we buy plants, like if you bought a plant in ag, like would and you asked, is this treated with neonics? Would they know? I mean, is there any labeling of any sort? So
I wouldn't
how would we
I wouldn't
know?
expect it from Walmart or
No.
Target, even though they say you go to ask the people, they have no idea.
They have
People
no
that work
idea.
there have no idea.
I think,
So-
yeah, pretty much anything that's not organic, you
Right.
should assume. And it's really hard to trace because it could, they bought their plant from someone who bought it from someone in
Yeah.
different stages.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, that's fairly impossible. There's so many different growers, and they do all different things. So well, I don't like it when nursery says, I don't have any control over this. I just buy in plants. I could tell them, but they were not going to listen to me. That's what I get from nurserymen. Because the growers have a lot more power, and they're growing to lots more people. And so they're very big, and they're powerful, and they're the ones we have to affect.
So if we go in and say we're not buying these plants because they have neonics, that's
Yeah.
what's gonna make the difference when somebody like Walker says to their supplier, people aren't buying anymore because they have neonics, then it's gonna make a difference.
Right, and then Walker actually has to there have to be enough other plants the Walker could grow. So where I'm from, Massachusetts, we have the Western Mass Pollinator Network, and we're trying to address that. How do we get more plants? And let's start growing more plants so there's more availability. But that's a long way.
What